Italian Wine Podcast. Chin Chin with Italian wine people.
Hello, this is the Italian Wine Podcast. My name is Monty Waldin. My guest today is Dr. Laura Catena. Laura is the director of the Catena Zapata winery in the Mendoza region of Argentina. And Laura really is a doctor. In your case, what do you specialize in as a medical doctor?
Emergency medicine. In England, they call it accident and emergency, I believe.
Okay, that's a very challenging job, I would imagine. Now, Laura, tell us about your father, Nicholas, first of all, because he was instrumental in putting Argentina on the wine map.
Yes, well, he grew up in a winemaking family. You know, he's a third generation. The family was founded by my great-grandfather, Nicola Catena, who came from Le Marche to Argentina in 1898. My father had grown up in this wine family, but actually he wanted to be a physicist, and he was planning to go study in the United States. He'd gotten a scholarship from Argentina. He didn't want to go into wine, and he was supported by his mother, who was an academic. She was the headmaster of the local school, and she thought, oh, you don't want to go into the family business, which, you know, was sacrilege in an Italian family because my father was also the oldest son. And so he was planning to do something else, but actually, sadly, his mother died in a car accident, and his father was so depressed he couldn't do anything. And my father, who was very young, you know, he was 19, had to basically take care of the family for a year or two until his father recovered. And that's how he came to stay in Argentina, fortunately, because then he went on to, you know, revolutionize Argentine wine, start exports of high-end Malbec, Cabernet Sauvignon, like really create the fine wine from Argentina category around the world.
So he was obviously a man that was driven, but he's very, very creative as well. What, apart from the fact that it really did put Argentina on the map, what are just a couple of little details that you think were also key in the importance of your family?
Well, I think that each generation, you know, from my great-grandfather making the decision to emigrate to Argentina, to my grandfather, who was actually this incredible blender, he could make a great wine in magical ways. You know, he had his tricks, like using grapes from Altamira, you know, and winemaking procedures. And he actually became a very important producer. And then my father had this vision when he went to California, and he saw that the Californians were challenging, you know, the French supremacy in wine. And he said, I'm going to try and do that in Argentina and really make Argentine wines that can be with the best of the world. You know, today we have 6 100-point wines. That would have been crazy to imagine 25 years ago. But in terms of your question about what are the things that maybe led to this, is I do think that my father was somebody that traveled a lot. He actually studied at Columbia University in New York. He was born in a tiny little village, less than 500 people, but ended up, seeing the world and understanding what was happening. He is an economist. He has a PhD in economics. So I think he also understood that, you know, the future of his region had to do with fine wine, that wine as a commodity, which, you know, that's what was happening with Chile at that time in the 80s. You know, it was very cheap wine, all the same. I think he realized that was not a good future for our region. And I think you mentioned the word creative. And, you know, my father is just an incredibly adventuresome person. You know, today he's 81 years old, and he gets so excited about social media and the posts we're making. And you know, nothing is too innovative for him, so I think this open-mindedness, this desire to try new things, has been an important part of the DNA of our family and of the people who work at Catena. You know, who are all incredibly inspiring and creative people. So yeah, I would say that and the last thing is what my father calls luck. He thinks that luck plays a very important role.
I mean, it's interesting you talk about storytelling. And what's interesting about the Catena story, it's kind of like the story of Argentina as well as the story of a family. I mean, can that sometimes be a little bit of a burden to you, or do you thrive on that? The fact that you get this attention, and almost all of the time you get incredibly good press because you do an incredibly good job.
Oh, I mean, for me, storytelling is natural, and perhaps it's because I grew up in a family of storytellers. My father, who was working very, very hard when my brother and I were young. I have a little sister, Adriana. She has a vineyard named after her, our most famous vineyard. But she was, 14 years afterwards. So when my brother and I were young, my brother Ernesto, every night we would never go to bed until my father arrived. We would lie in the bed, put the lights down, and then for an hour my father would make up stories, and we would alternate, from a Tarzan story to a princess story. It was a bit sexist, but we each got to choose, and my brother had to hear the princess stories as well, and I liked the Tarzan stories. And I grew up in a family of storytelling. Every night we heard this adventure, and my father is so creative with his storytelling. So it's not that, I sit down and I say, oh, what story I'm going to tell. I feel like everything that happens to me during the day is out of a movie, perhaps, because you're seeing it that way. But I agree with you that telling the story in an interesting way is not so easy. And I do work on that because, it can't be too long. People get bored. And it's good to tell the stories that people might be interested in. One example is, I always know not to talk too much about my children because nobody wants to spend an hour hearing your story about your child,
In terms of what you did for the Argentine wine industry, obviously creating stories means often in wine the idea of terroir, particular areas of the country or region that have different points of difference in terms of wine expression. You were real leaders in that as well. Just give us a brief comment on Argentine regions as a whole, and say Mendoza in particular.
Yes, well, Mendoza has extremely diverse terroir because we have, the equivalent of going from the Southern Rhone to Champagne in 45 minutes, in just 100 plus kilometers, because we're going from around 700-meter elevation to up to 1,500-meter elevation. And in addition, we have different soils because usually higher in the mountains, the alluvial soils are bigger stones, and then further down, it's more clays and sands. So there are these very different terroirs. But in terms of storytelling, I tell you, everybody in Mendoza knows that the Malbec tastes different in each one of these regions. So we never understood when people are saying, oh, all Mendoza Malbec is the same. And I was just thinking, well, they need to come and see this. And I wasn't doing much about it, although it was hurting our category because people were thinking that Malbec maybe was not, a grape of the pedigree of Nebbiolo and Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, but it does have that capacity to age, to shine, to make terroir-specific wine. And then one day I got really pissed off because somebody asked me for the 10th time, what is happening after Malbec in Mendoza? I'm thinking, this is a 2,000-year-old grape that my great-grandfather planted, his first vineyard. Why do I need to be thinking about what comes after Malbec? And, I realized that actually it was my job. It was the job of all the producers in Argentina to explain this diversity in these regions. And that's what I've been doing, for the last 15 years.
Yeah, it's a little bit like going to Pomerol and saying, when are you going to get rid of the Merlot?
Exactly. Well, actually, that time when that person asked me, it was actually a French journalist living in Quebec. I actually said, well, would you ask Aubert de Villaine what they're going to plant after Pinot Noir? Yeah. Although actually today with climate change, some people need to be having this question.
I mean, is that because Malbec is quite fairly resistant to high heat and also to luminosity?
Well, so actually in the altitude, it's very cold. So we are planting Malbec in zone 1 Winkler, which is close to the colder parts of Burgundy and some parts of Champagne, where you would never plant a Bordeaux variety. But because of the combination of the more frequent sunlight, we have more sun, there's not a lot of rain. So we get the cool climate with more sunlight, and that allows us to have very nice high acidity because of the cool climate, but good tannin development because of the sunlight that allows for the photosynthesis. And also there's an effect of the plant increasing the polyphenols in the skins as a protection against the sun. That's so extreme at the high altitude. So I think that many people think that Mendoza is warm. Yes, there are some warm parts, towards the east and the lower altitudes, but very quickly you go to this cool climate. So for sure you can make, a very age-worthy, very fine Malbec. We also make some beautiful Pinot Noir. There's just not that much planted, and Cabernet Sauvignon and other varieties. But yeah, the cool climate is something that most people don't know, because they imagine, South America has to be warm.
So in terms of if people that haven't maybe tried as many Malbecs as you, just give us a couple of examples of Malbec wines that your family makes from, say, different altitudes and different soils, and what the differences in taste might be, please.
Yeah, so first, the general thing about Malbec is that it's a very rich wine. It's got a lot of fruit on the nose. Depending on on the altitude and the place, more red fruits, more black fruits, more violets. Always has a little natural vanilla. So the actual Malbec grape has natural vanilla in it, whether it's made with oak or not. So it's very aromatic. It's got quite a bit of density, but then the very main distinctive feature is that it's very smooth. Regardless of where it comes from, whether it comes from very high altitude, lower altitude, it's got these very smooth tannins. In fact, when I read a lot about French Malbec in 18th and 19th century books, they always said, never bottle the Cabernet Sauvignon alone. Please make sure you blend it with Malbec for the soft tannins. So that's a characteristic that Malbec shares. But now on to your question about different wines. So, we have a wine called Malbec Argentino, which has a label that on the label we tell the history of the variety through 4 women. It's a really fun label that has won many awards. You should take a look at it. It's www.malbecargentino.com if you want to look at the packaging. And this is a blend of 2 vineyards, old vines, about 50 years old average. And to me, it's your very rich classic, a bit oaky, like kind of the big wine, maybe, what people think of as the Napa style. Now, so that's one style of Malbec that you can make a little riper. And it has a blend from one vineyard in a warmer region, which is very old, and then one vineyard in the Uco Valley, a little cooler. Another wine that I love to show people, actually 3 wines, are the 3 single vineyards from the Adriana vineyard. This is the vineyard that we have the 6 100-point wines from. And there's one called River Stones, one Mundus Facilus Terrae, which means elegant microbes of the earth. And it's in honor to the microbes that we've studied in this particular parcel. And the other one is called Fortuna Terrae, which in Latin means, luck of the earth. And these 3 parcels are literally right next to each other, 1,500 meters elevation, different soils, some more stony, some more limestone-ish. The Fortuna Terrae is more sandy. And the wines are completely different, yet, they come from places one right next to each other, a few meters away. And these are more violet. They have more black fruit. The river stones, from these very stony soils often have more texture and a little more tannin. The Fortuna Terra, I've often been told, tastes more like a Pinot Noir than a Malbec. And then the Mundus is I don't know, just the most beautiful thing. And all these 3 wines are very age-worthy. So I think that those, from the Malbec Argentino, the more ripe style, and the Adriana wines that are more mineral and more cool climate wines, I think those are very interesting. And then we have our classic Catena Malbec that sells all over the world, that I call it my Chanel number 5, because, it's a wine that it's in every blind tasting, master of wine test. They put it as a wine to be identified as Malbec. And it's an altitude blend of 4 different vineyards. And if you taste it, you will remember it, because it tastes like Malbec. You should recognize it. And it's it's just smooth and beautiful and elegant, mix of black and red fruit, a little spiciness, very classic Malbec.
Was your family maybe frustrated when the sort of craze, the sort of journalist craze in the late 1990s, the 100-point scores and these big wines coming out of Bordeaux that often tasted very unnatural to me. Were you a little bit maybe frustrated in Argentina? So listen, we could make these kind of wines very easily and very naturally because we have perfect conditions for these, nice full-bodied Malbec. Was it frustrating sometimes that you didn't get the recognition then? Obviously, you've got it now, but was that
Yeah.
a bit of a different period then?
You know, I spend very little time on feeling left out or anything like that. I think for us, we were watching and studying. This is perhaps something that is another skill set of my father, that for him, everything that happens that's good or bad is to be analyzed. He doesn't celebrate too much the good things. He doesn't get too sad with the bad things. It's all part of the job, and we have to analyze it. But I do agree with you that we did think, oh wow, these wines are getting these scores, we should make wines like this. And we actually did try doing the 300% oak, and we actually did some trials to see what happens. And actually, Malbec is a grape that really soaks up oak. So what we found was that when we use this extreme oak, the fruit was gone. I think with Cabernet Sauvignon, if you have a really good Cabernet, you can put in quite a bit of oak and it'll still be a nice wine. But this method of too much oak and too many ripe grapes, to me, destroyed the Malbec. And we realized that pretty early on. So we never really went on that path. On the other hand, I think that the world has become too opposite, in that the sommeliers and the winemaking community wants mineral wines, high acidity, exotic wines, that have sometimes even extreme features of some sort or another. And then consumers who spend a lot of money on wine actually do still like ripe grapes and a bit of oak. So that's why, for example, we have the Adriana wines that are such specific wines from terroir that we are really careful with the oak. We never wanted there to be too much oak. But with the Malbec Argentino, we allow the wine to be a little more voluptuous, a little more ripe, and a little more oaky. So my view is that there is a place for both styles in the world.
What about other wine styles from Mendoza that don't involve Malbec? Just say, for example, in white wines, for example.
Oh, yes. So, very little is known about the white wines of all of Argentina, but we make incredible white wines. And in fact, there's just as many white grapes planted as red. Right now, it's probably a little more red, but there's been times in the last century that there's been many more white grapes. So you have, a lot of really good Chardonnay because of the high altitude. And we have two wines, the Adriana Vineyard White Stones and White Bones, that have, getting so much recognition. We sell out every year. We release them and they sell out. And we have the Catena Alta Chardonnay. So I think Chardonnay from high altitude is a very special flavor. It has the minerality of the cool climate, but the creaminess that probably comes from the sunlight and the alluvial soils. So that's an interesting wine. There's also some really good Semillon in Argentina that came at the same time as Malbec and used to be co-planted with Malbec. So some people have made some really good Semillon. We actually have this blend that we call white clay because it's from this area in Luján de Cuyo that has clay soils. That's a blend of Chenin and Semillon, which I don't know that anybody does this. Well, maybe in the Loire they do. Do they do those two together? No, because Semillon is more for Bordeaux.
It's a good blend because you've got one sort of low acid grape and one with a little bit more acidity.
Exactly. And we actually are coming out with this wine because we did some trials about what could we do with the beautiful white variety we have in Argentina. And these two go really well together and they make this really refreshing white wine. So that's interesting. And then we have the Torrontés, which is a criolla grape. It's one of these grapes that are some sort of, permutation of the original grapes brought by the Jesuits and by the Spanish. But then they've interbred in Argentina. There's hundreds of different kinds of native criollas. And one of them is the Torrontés Riojano. Rioja is a part of Argentina, same as Spain, but it's actually an Argentine region called La Rioja, Argentina. And this Torrontés, I think, is very delicious. It has, these terpene kind of aromatics, a little bit like Riesling, and a nice palate, especially if it's harvested early with high acidity. It's just, the most drinkable wine and a little bit exotic. I make ice cream with it, which I like.
It's funny. You've got this very sort of quote masculine Malbec, And then you've got the white wine that is a complete contrast, semi-aromatic, aromatic. And it's kind of nature's provided the locals everything that they would need in terms of contrast, naturally. So what about your family? Do you have Italian family roots?
Yeah, so my great grandfather Nicola came from Le Marche, and actually from my mother's side, her grandmother came from Liguria. So I grew up feeling that I was Argentine and Italian. We even have Italian passports, but basically we were brought up as part Italian. Being Italian was just as important as being Argentine. And I am also part Spanish, but somehow for my father, because his grandfather had been so important to him, and the Italian side, he felt very Italian. All of us speak Italian. We've spent time in Italy. We speak it fluently. My children speak Italian. Some of my siblings' children speak Italian. We go to Italy very frequently. Maria Ponzi, who we did the little session about La Dolce Vita for Wine to Wine, she also said the same thing, that her family, would every year go to Italy. It's like a peregrinaje. I don't know how you say that in English.
Pilgrimage.
A pilgrimage, right? It's a pilgrimage that we do pretty much every year to Italy, and I feel very at home in Italy. I feel like the culture is quite similar to the culture in Argentina, and I think the same thing happens to the Italians who come to Argentina. That's why we have a lot of Italians making wine in Mendoza, like more recent Italians coming to Argentina.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. There are many things that make Argentina an incredibly fun place to be in, but the sort of the Italian ingredient there is also another little bit extra. When you're in Italy, you're going to go out for lunch or for dinner. You can choose whichever food you want, but you're only allowed to drink a Malbec. Which is your favorite Italian dish with an Argentine Malbec?
What is my favorite Italian dish? I am like a fanatic of bufala and the Italian tomatoes, which are so much better than the tomatoes anywhere else other than Argentina. But that's not good for a Malbec. You know what my very favorite pasta is? The penne alla matriciana, because I like very spicy things. And I think that Malbec is one of the few varieties that actually can, stand up to a spicy pasta sauce, even a tomato sauce, because of the sweet tannins, which are not from sugar. They are just a natural thing about Malbec. And the other thing would be ossobuco. I mean, I've always loved ossobuco, and I think it goes extraordinarily well with Malbec. But those would be it.
That's quite a rich dish, isn't it? Ossobuco can be.
Yeah, Osobuco is rich, and Malbec. For example, this Malbec Argentino I was telling you about would go so well with an Osobuco because it's rich and it's got this texture and the thing about Malbec is that it's big wine with soft tannins, and there's not that many other wines like that. And it has nice acidity, but not as high acidity as, let's say, a Nebbiolo or a Pinot Noir. So it's just a very friendly wine, a very hugging. It's like a wine that hugs you, and so it's good for those kind of dishes that are like the Osobuco. Like Osobuco is just so grand, so big.
Malbec is kind of cuddly. It's big, but
It's cuddly. Yes, cuddly. That's like a very good word. I will use it. Cuddly.
okay. Um, I think we've done everything. If there's anything else you want to tell us, do tell us now. I mean, I know that there's a new winery project called Luca, Giusto, is that right?
Yes, yeah. Well, no, Luca, started actually 20 years ago. It's my own wine that I basically look for old vines. And I started out buying grapes from growers that were about to sell their vineyards and were selling in bulk. And I started making these just amazing old wines. And it's been around for 20 years. It's my own little project. And the reason it's named Luca is because my son is named Luca and I couldn't come up with another name. So, but it's a good name.
What are your favorite little discoveries? Obviously, by having the Luca brand or winery, I mean, what extra areas of Argentina did you discover via that?
Well, for one, I discovered all these old Malbec vineyards that were on their way to being pulled out. And we really prevented a lot of Malbec from being pulled out because of just one winery. And then other Argentines started following and buying these grapes. And in fact, the other thing we've done is every time one of these old vineyards is being pulled out, which at some point they have to be, we actually recover the genetic material and we replant it and we preserve it. So that's been part of the Luca project that, we also do with Catena. Another thing that I found was this incredible Syrah vineyard. There was a Massal selection brought from the Rhone in the 1950s by a researcher in the Argentine Institute. And he had planted it in his own vineyard. And we found this vineyard and we make this Syrah that is just so beautiful and so age-worthy and just fantastic. And we're also preserving that selection. So those are two of the gems. And then I also have a Pinot Noir project that I'm doing single parcel Pinot Noir from the name of the brand is Domaine Nico, which has been really exciting over the last 2 years.
Okay, well, you're a very busy lady. It's the definition of a female multitasker. Thanks very much for speaking with us today. And we wish you every success with all your projects, or even more success. And just thanks for all the stuff that you guys do and your family's done over the years. When I spent quite a bit of time in Argentina, and it's just had such incredible potential. And it's so nice to see that potential has been accepted as a given internationally in international markets. And I think it's one of the best stories in the last 20 years that these fantastic wines, and also often very good value, incredibly good value for the quality that you get, is being recognized. And your family, without any shadow of a doubt, has created that. And so, and just the way you speak and the way you carry yourself, you come from a wonderful family, and I think your father is an exceptional man.
Absolutely.
So, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Monty, and è un vero piacere di essere in questo canale italiano. Mi piace tanto l'Italia, allora grazie per accogliermi tanto bene ogni volta che vado in Italia.
Grazie mille.
Grazie a te, Monty.
Ciao, Laura.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.